So next up, you know what? I'm going to say it this time because I'm tired of being told that I'm beating up on teachers when I'm beating up on the school system. Sorry about the background music from the article there on money. But I constantly beat on the school system, and I say things like, I'm not talking about teachers here. Well, I've got another recent freaking hysterical tirade about how I'm so mean and hateful to teachers, and there's no group of people in the world so hated as teachers that are made up of poor women who do a really hard job for not a lot of money. And so I'm actually going to beat up on teachers here. And I'm going to beat up on teachers not because I think that they're significantly overpaid or underpaid, not for the work that they do, not for doing the best they can. I'm going to beat up on them for their bitching. Their bitching and the fact that I think they are one of the most spoiled group of professionals in the world from a standpoint of what they think they're entitled to. So yes, if you're a teacher and you get mad when you think I'm beating up on teachers, today you can be legitimately mad because I'm legitimately going to beat up on your bullshit. This article that I'm not going to read, you can read it if you want to, makes the heart-wrenching case that teachers, some teachers are saying it's the only way to survive, that they work at a job during the summer when they should be off. Okay, so what you're saying is to be paid a rate that is commensurate with the other professionals you think you're entitled to the same rate as, then you need to work the same number of days they do. The average person in America works 260 days a year. And that they're not contract. Most jobs have some sort of contractual obligation, 5 days a week, whatever it is. They're not required to work that many by contract, but they do, overtime, etc. The average teacher works 185 days a year. 260 versus 185. And the teachers are saying it's unfair for us to earn enough money to have the things that, because it's not to survive, it's to have the things that you want. That I have to work those extra days that I should be off because that's what a teacher's supposed to have. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of like the real world. One of this things in this article, here's some stuff I'm just tired of from you teachers. I am sick of this shit. Absolutely just fed up with hearing this crap. Here. It's also expensive to work in education. 94% of U.S. public school teachers report paying out of pocket for supplies, spending an average of $479 a year. First of all, spending $479 a year to do a job that in the worst state in the union starts at $40,000 is not a trial. It's not a tribulation. You should see when I first taught my first job in telecommunications, and I worked as a contractor for MCI for $14 an hour, and I had to pay for my travel out of that. The first thing I had to do was scrape up $800 to buy tools. And that was just enough to get the job. And over the next year, I invested another $1,000 in tools. And by the time I got to where I left that contract and went and did something better, I had gotten a raise all the way up to a whopping, $16 an hour. Half of which was paid as per diem so I could sleep in a roach motel while I was building up my education by doing real shit so that you could make a phone call. So I don't want to hear your whiny shit about less than $500 in supplies that you quote unquote need to do your job. Because I've talked to some of you guys, and usually I find out it's like mostly it seems to be in the elementary schools, and it's all kinds of decorations and shit to put in your classroom. You don't need that shit. It's not necessary for your job. If you want to do it, Godspeed. Go ahead, but don't bitch about it. But it's better for the kids and whatever. That's your opinion. You've made your choice of what to do with your money like everybody else in America. You are not required to buy jack diddly shit to do your job, really, any more than any other professional. Because that's why, compared to other professionals, my ass. Go ask a mechanic that works on cars what he spends on his tools. Seriously, I mean, the whole thing is bullshit. Now, does this mean that teachers suck? No. It means you've been sold into a belief that no matter what you earn, no matter what school district you're in, no matter what grade you teach, that you're underpaid and underappreciated. Well, that's just bull. Because inside the teaching profession, there are teachers that are stellar. You should be making double what you make. There are teachers that shouldn't even have a job. I go to enough parent-teacher nights in my time as a parent to know that there are teachers that I could pull out of that, give them a little bit of training, and turn a company over to them, and they could run a company. and make six figures tomorrow. They're that talented. And yet they're choosing to teach. And there are teachers that I would be skeptical about giving a job of bussing tables at Denny's. There are both extremes. And most are somewhere in the median middle, and they're earning about a middle wage for a degreed professional, and that's what middle gets you. You've chosen a profession where mediocrity is acceptable, so you will be paid mediocrely. That's the facts. And you're going to get better benefits than most Americans. You're going to get 12 weeks a year off. And you're going to get a pension that you can start collecting after 20 years of working. Many of you will be in your mid-40s, and if you choose to, you can walk away making $24,000 to $36,000 on average, yes, I checked, in pension money for the rest of your life. That could be 40, 50, or more years to not work. And in spite of that, instead of taking that opportunity in your 40s, where if you were that great at what you do, to go do something else and still draw your pension, most of you stay for 30 to 40 years. Even though, in your own words, it's like being in the middle of a, quote, war zone, end quote. See, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. Again, this doesn't mean you all suck. This means your rhetoric, which if you taught the trivium instead of new math, you would understand your rhetoric is bullshit. And then the other one, this is the one that gets me. They have to take classes and training. They don't even get paid for it. They spend 30 to 50 hours a year improving their knowledge. And guess what? You and I mostly pay for it. Now, some of them pursue advanced degrees. They're going to get their master's or their PhD so they can further their career, and they have to pay for that, like everybody else that pursues advanced degrees. But a lot of the shit that they take for their qualifying hours or whatever their district, they are paid, not paid to take it, it's paid for them. When my wife was an LPN, making like $14 an hour, by the way, she had to take something like 60 hours every 2 or 3 years or something like that. She had to pay for it. She had to do it in her own time. And she didn't get 3 months a year off that she could use to do that with. She had to take it in the time that she had. When I was in telecommunications, eventually I got certifications from a company called Bixby. I had an RCDD with a LAN and an OSP specialty. I had to do 30 hours per 3 years of CEUs for my RCDD and 10 hours apiece for the two specialties. So 50 hours every 3 years, and I had to pay for it myself. And because it was a relatively specialized and advanced certification, those extra credits and shit were expensive. And I had to do it while I was working on average 80 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, so I was getting 2 weeks a year off, not 12. And this is the real world. And that doesn't mean you suck as teachers. That means all the shit you're bitching about is not unique to you. In fact, you have it better than most of the people you're bitching to. You can't come to somebody and go, well, I'm supposed to get 12 weeks off for summer, which is just a number that you've thrown out because that's what the kids get. But I have to go back a week early, so that's only 11, and then I have to take these courses. Because the woman like my wife who's busting her hump, who's still working when you're home, who's working when you're on vacation, has to take the same type of extra credit stuff that you do, and they have to pay for it. Your bullshit about having to take extra classes and shit, no one cares about. Your crap about doing your lesson plans is bullshit because the state gives you your curriculum. If you take, I have to spend 5 hours a week doing my lesson plans, then you suck at your job. Then you suck. Because you already know what you're going to teach. It's already prescribed. I'm up till midnight every night grading papers. Then you suck at your job. Then you don't know how to do your job. Then you are mediocre being paid a mediocre wage. And this is what kills you good teachers. So the good teachers are mad at me. If you paid attention, you wouldn't be, because I'm putting the finger on your exact problem. You are in a profession where mediocre is more than good enough. And the mediocre and the top performer with the same amount of time and in the same district get paid the same money. You're never going to be paid what you're worth because we can't afford to pay you what we're worth and pay the people next to you who are getting paid already more than they're worth what you're worth too. You, the 20%, the top 20% of teachers, I can't afford to pay you at the top 20% of income because I'm required by your bullshit in your system that you've set up to pay the bottom 20% as good as I pay you. So you've picked a profession that is going to result for 80% or more of the people in it, outside the administrators and some specialties, as a mediocre wage because you're allowing mediocrity to be the significant, I'm not even saying it's a significant majority, a sufficient number that that's all we can afford to pay everybody. Now, if you really want to fix at least part of this problem, get on board the merit pay train. Get on board the thing where the teachers that are actually better teachers get paid better. Get on board where the local people that determine how well you're performing say, this person gets a 10% raise this year. This person gets a deduction of 4% because they are not meeting the minimum standards. Well, I'll quit. Go ahead. Then we'll hire somebody that will pay more money because they're better than you. Which is what? Again, teachers, it's the real world. You don't live in the real world. In the real world, the bottom performers get fired. They get laid off. They get terminated. They get pushed out the door even when they're not fired. They get drummed out. They get put in a closet somewhere until they quit. People that don't show up when they're supposed to get fired. Period. They don't get warnings. They don't get yelled at. They get fired. And the best rise and the best that don't rise in the entity they're working for go to another place that will pay them what they're worth. You live in a bubble, and that bubble has advantages and it has disadvantages. If you want the advantages, the disadvantages come with it. And again, even today where I'm saying I'm beating up on teachers, this isn't about teachers the people. This is about your freaking crybaby story about how hard you work and how underpaid you are. When we do the math and we look at what you get paid for what you actually do, you are paid as well as very highly paid professionals. Because another thing, and this is not just teachers, we've convinced ourselves of this, that having your presence required equals work. If I am doing anything remotely associated to my job, I'm on the clock. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're really not. And stop convincing. And now I'm past teachers. Stop convincing yourself that you are. What are you producing? What are you delivering? When you're producing and delivering, you're on the clock, whether you work for yourself or somebody else. When you're daydreaming, when you're posting to Facebook, when you're sitting in study hall and your job is basically watch the room, you're not doing the job of a teacher, are you? We don't need teachers to do that job. We use you to do that job because the number of classes you teach, you're there, you're available, and you're on salary. Again, you're back to you are in a profession that does not allow us to pay the top 20% of people better than the bottom 80%. So you're going to have a mediocre wage in the end. Because that's what bureaucracy creates. Sorry if you don't like it. It's true. It's another reason that the government school system is dying. And the reason that most teachers will be replaced by technology within 20 years. I'm sorry. It's the case. You can not believe it if you don't want to, but it ain't going to change reality.